welcome to this episode of the bi-weekly Special Fathers Network Dad Zoom call. The topic is respite in marriage, arguably one of the most important topics for any family who's raising children, and especially those raising a child or children with special needs. So we're very fortunate to have a handful of our Special Fathers Network mentor fathers join us tonight on the topic of respite in marriage. Just a little plug. The 21st Century Dads Foundation is a 501c3. The signature of that organization is the Special Fathers Network, a dad-to-dad mentoring program for fathers raising a child with special needs. To date, we've recruited about 500 dads to serve as mentor fathers, matching those dads with younger dads who are close to the beginning of their journey with the same type of special need, same family structure, etc. And on a twice a month basis, we try to host a Zoom call like we're doing on different topics. And tonight's topic again is respite in marriage. So what I'd like each of the dads to do is to make some brief self-introductions. Just take a minute or two to introduce themselves. And then we'll go round robin again and we'll cover a series of questions that we've prepared. So we're going to go in order of their Special Fathers Network Dad podcast number. Scott, you would be the senior citizen here. Special Fathers Network Dad podcast number 9. Scott, the Zoom floor is yours.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm glad to be back. I was wondering when we were going to start these up again. My name is Scott Sowers. I live in Lilburn, Georgia, which is outside of Atlanta. I have a daughter, Gloria, who's autistic and mentally delayed. She is 33 years old. She's wonderful. And as far as what I've done, I've been on I started special needs ministry at our church. I've coached special needs baseball for 18 years. Hopefully that's going to start up next spring. I've been involved in the Special Olympics with Gloria in basketball and just involved in the community at large. I did make a film called Special Needs, shameless plug. It's streaming on PureFlix right now. If you do watch it, please let me know what you think about it. It seems to be doing well. And I've also written a little booklet, I call it. It's called Trust Your Journey. We all have needs. Some are just more special than others. I've been married to Sharon for, well, this August 8th, it'll be 40 years. So it's a wonderful thing. And we've been through a lot, needless to say. Gloria has an older sister who has a 4-year-old daughter, my little Emma Rose, and a 5-month-old son named John Paul Swanson, who's just awesome. He's just really awesome. We can't get enough of them. And Kelly's been a school teacher for 13 years at a 10th grade in a big high school here in Gwinnett County. So that's my story pretty much. And I've been, talking with these guys and got on board with David a while back when he first got this Special Fathers Network going. And it's just amazing all the things he's done. And I look forward to see what we're going to do in the future. That's it.
Scott, thanks for joining us. Paul, the Zoom stage is yours.
Okay, my name is Paul Koza. I live in Libertyville, Illinois. Been in Libertyville for about 25 years. I've been married to my wife, Maureen, for 43 years. I have 4 sons. I have Brian, who's 37, and he's got my 2 grandsons, and he and his wife Liz live in Columbus, Ohio. And I have triplet boys, Kevin, Sean, and Dan. Kevin is married, lives in Charlotte with my 2 granddaughters. And then his brothers, Dan and Sean, are both autistic. And Sean is a little bit more pervasive developmental delay. I just was thinking about the fact that I've been married 43 years to Maureen, and we had the triplets just about when we were married 10 years. So we had a wonderful, healthy little guy, and Brian, who was about 3.5, said, hey, let's go for the girl. And we got 3 more boys, and unfortunately 2 of them also are autistic. It's been an incredible journey, and we'll get into those things, I'm sure, tonight. I, like Scott, have been involved as they grew. I coached buddy baseball, which was awesome experience. Got really involved in Special Olympics. I was coaching youth football and buddy baseball and Special Olympics. That almost ended my marriage. But, my wife's been wonderful and understood completely that, where my skills lied with the boys and my heart lied was obviously in the sports side of everything. I worked in sales for about 40 years. I've been retired for about 6 years now. And that's really got me focused on my guys. Most of you know my story, and I've worked tirelessly for the last 18 years. And we, in the middle of a pandemic, opened up a group home for Dan and Sean with another young man with autism. And it's been a wild start-stop, but right now they're there 5 nights a week. And that seems to be going well. We're going to bring them out to Columbus with us for my grandson's birthday this weekend, a little road trip for everybody. We're going to stay at a hotel this time. And, it's as Scott said, there's just a million things that have occurred. But I think the biggest thing that I want to talk about tonight is that my wife and I have been married 43 years, and we basically made a commitment, at first to say, we're not going to change things. Things are going to come at us, but we're going to try to live our life as normally as we can with 2 disabled autistic sons that might be a little bit of a challenge as they grow. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm sure we're going to get into a series of questions that I could add to.
Excellent. Paul, thanks for being with us. Rick, the Zoom stage is yours.
Thank you. Am I coming in okay? Okay, so Rick Daynes. I live in San Diego, California. I have 5 kids, ages 19 down to 8. 3 are on the spectrum, and my youngest, who is 8, has Down syndrome. And I'm just pumped for this topic. If we didn't have respite, I wouldn't be married. So, I love it. And what can I say? I'm battling every day in the thick of it, and things are actually going a little better because of respite. And so, I'll talk till I'm blue in the face about that, but I'll go ahead and pass it on, and we'll get to the subject.
Well, before we do that, why don't you mention what you do occupationally, and then I'll allow you to just talk about your book for a moment.
I had a water filtration company, but when my youngest, who has autism, drove us to hell and back, I sold to my partner, and I went into sales because it was just a better schedule for me. So I have a small rep company, and if you come to San Diego and you go into the airport shops and down to the waterfront, all the touristy shops, that's my stuff. And I wrote a book. It's called Keep It Together, Man, for dads with a special kid. And basically, it's everything I wish one of you guys would have sat me down 23 years ago and said, look, Rick, here's what you need to pay attention to, and you can let this stuff slide. Like, this is the fluff, and this is what you really need to grasp onto, which is why there's a lot of talk about respite and marriage in my book, because you need a partner if you're going through that. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks again, Rick. Okay, Rich, over to you.
Rich Gathro, live in Largo, Florida. Been here for 5 years, retired from Washington, D.C., where I was a university educator after 40 years. Retired here to cut our financial costs so we could maintain an estate for our disabled son, cerebral palsy, who lives with us. Been married 43 years. Also have a special needs daughter who's highly functional and actually is married. We have already thrown this word journey out more than once. I don't know if the rest of you have picked that up, but that's a good word for us, is the word journey. And it's so good to have you men as companions in this. My wife, Kathy, and I have worked to build a network here in the Largo, Florida area that we simply call informally the village of special needs families, where we rally to each other. And we're very grateful for a local physical therapist who has developed a gym program for all of our children. It's been very, very special. And the one sad piece to it all, this village, is, I would say, the hard work in getting the fathers involved and getting the fathers to participate. And my wife calls it my mother's group, but and that's something I'm excited about this network that we have right now, because we can potentially recruit fathers who are on the periphery into seeing they're not alone in this, and that we can be a support to one another. The 43 years of marriage, I confess that the respite has been critical. I think if I had known 43 years ago about how much work would be on this journey, I probably would have been a coward and chickened out. By the way, my son's name is Will. My daughter's name is Katerina. Yeah, she's 35. Yeah.
Okay, well, Rich, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your authenticity. One of the things that each of the dads in the network has said almost verbatim is that I wish there was something like this when I was a younger dad. And some dads are honest, like you, Rich, and would say, I don't know if I would have taken advantage of it, right? Just because that's who we are. Men, are known not to pull over and ask for directions when we're lost. And I'm super excited to, ask you each a series of questions tonight. And I thought we'd start out by having each of you reflect on one or two things, and at the risk of starting out on a negative, just to say, we were in a dark place, right? When things were going against us. And I think it's important for each of you to reflect on a situation, or maybe a couple of situations, so that the dads, the parents that might be listening to this by video, know that you're authentic, right? It's not like, hey, it's been a straight line, I've gotten it all right from the get-go. And I'm wondering if you would each share a situation, maybe as a younger dad, where it felt like things were coming apart, right? I wasn't on top of my game. Scott, back to you.
Let's see. I was perfect. There was nothing ever wrong with me. No, I'm kidding. I think being young, when everybody says, they wish they had something like this, back when they were young and had kids. With my dark time was just, I couldn't fix anything. Men or dads or fixers, we solve problems. Women and wives are nurturers. At least that's what it was like when I was young, and still is for me now. I guess it's might be politically incorrect now, but that's the way I see it. And when I was going through hard times, trying to accept it and denying, and it's like I say in my little story there about my journey. It's denial is tough. You're going to deny it. You're going to look for answers. You're going to try to solve it. You're going to try to fix it. You're going to go through all that. What's going to happen? What are we doing? You're sad. But Sharon stood there and just absorbed it all. And she was the rock, basically, that kept me sane. But eventually, what happens when you're starting off, you go through all of that. You're going to go through all that, the pain, the agony, the why me, Lord, why God? And then you're going to hit that wall called reality. And when you finally hit that wall, you're going to crash through it, and you're going to start learning more. You're going to start being your child's advocate. So the dark times for me were, I guess, I couldn't fix it. I couldn't make it right. And this was 1984, 85, 88, 89, 90. I mean, that's it's not like it was different back then as far as doctors. You take them in. She did all these tests, you know, and things like that. And finally had a guy just tell us, look, she's going to be what she's going to be. Just love her, work with her. Don't, you know, just mollycoddle her or anything. Let her do whatever she can do. So that's what we did. The dark times for me were, as I got older, I felt sorry for Gloria a lot. And it happened at a dance one time. We took her to a prom or some dance. She went over, got all dressed up, went to the school, stood there, walked up. I said, go be. And she walked up to a group of girls and just stood there and looked at them, you know, and stood there. And they all looked at her, giggled, and all walked away. And it just crushed my heart. I mean, those are the kind of dark times I go through or went through. And I still have them sometimes when she says things like, you know, Dad, when I get married, I'm going to live over by Kelly. Or, Dad, when I get my license, I'm going to do this. Or, you know, when I get a house, you just feel like, geez, you know. And I had this conversation with someone the other day, and I'll end with this because it's kind of funny. They were saying, God, you know, could anything happen or change? I said, well, I'm just kind of waiting for the day when Gloria, you know, looks up at Sharon and I and goes, whoa, dude, that was a trip, man. Now, can I go get my license? And they just looked at me like I was insane. But, you know, the what ifs, and in my movie, I have a what if scene where she sees her brother as being typical. And, but yeah, you know, you're always going to have some kind of dark side to this, and it's going to catch up with you, and it's never going to leave you. And you just smile through it, take your daily hug that I get every time I walk in the front door, and everything's fine. But yeah, if I could tell any young people now is get a support group, get those family members and people that want to help, and it's all there, and you're going to be fine. That's
Scott,
it.
thanks for sharing. I love your authenticity.
Thanks.
Paul, back to you.
Okay. You know, thinking it's interesting. As I mentioned, we had a son and thought we were going to get a little girl, and we got 3 more boys. So the first hurdle was not the disability. It was the sheer fact that we were going to have triplets. And I was excited. I thought, oh my God, I've got 3 linebackers. I already got a safety. I'm ready to go. And my wife, the second we had the ultrasound, was in tears. And she said, how are we going to take care of Brian? How are we going to raise these kids? I never even thought of the health risks or any of those things. And, you know, so we started plowing forward, and she was incredible. I mean, my boys were 6'6", 6'3", and 4'11". And, you know, they're healthy, you know, all of them through age 1, fantastic, normal. It was crazy, you know, trying to manage 3-4 kids under the age of 3.5. And, you know, I didn't have a lot. I was a sales guy, doing okay. My wife wasn't working, obviously, with the triplets. So we counted on her parents, and we didn't hire a nanny, but we hired a girl that we found through the church that would come and help us, a baby caregiver. She lived with us. She was not very good. And then we kind of let her gently go, and we found someone else for the church. And, you know, so we had help. And then all of a sudden, things started to change. You know, autism kind of manifests itself around 18 months. And we started to notice that Dan and Sean were very different. We had Kevin, who was the same age and was developing normally. We had Brian, who was kind of off the wall. He's a high energy guy. And we kind of noticed that things were going. So, you know, you're just taking a breath of raising triplets to age 2. You got 3 2-year-olds and a 4-year-old. And all of a sudden you find out the 2 are autistic. So the ceiling just got really low. But her parents, who my father-in-law passed away a couple of years ago. My mother-in-law is 92 and, you know, failing health, but she's wonderful. They gave up everything. They were there for us all the time and allowed us to kind of do normal things. So like Scott said, you're kind of like, okay, are we going to be able to fix this? What is autism? You know, back 33 years ago, 1 in 10,000, now 1 in 58. You know, so what was it? What was it? So we went to, we saw both the psychiatry side of things, and we also saw the neurology side of things. And then I'm always been a guy, I'm a grinder. So, and exactly what Scott said, I'm going to fix this so my wife doesn't go out of her mind. And I'm going to stay steady on what our plan is. And the first plan was, okay, what do we do first? Special rec of Lake, or not special rec, but CEDAL, Special Education of Lake County here where we live, had a program. We got the guys tested. We just continued to move forward each time. I'm going to tell you a crazy story. At, let's see, 88, right? So they were not even a year old, and I won a trip to Australia. So we're on the sales trip, and I said to Maureen, we're never going to go to Australia again. So between two aunts, my in-laws, our little helper, 5 people, we took off for Australia. Most of the people stayed 2.5 weeks. We got on a plane in Chicago that went to LA, that went to Hawaii, that went to New Zealand, that went to Sydney. By the time we got there 2 days later, we had 2.5 days, 2.5 days in another place, got back on the planes. So we had more time in the air, I think, than actually in Australia. But we made it work. And that's an example of, I guess, it was family respite at that time, but it was kind of like, this is not the dark side, but it's there's always going to be challenges. And if you believe that you can overcome them, you will. Now, from that moment on, it just kept being one battle after another. Okay, CEDAL says, well, they're severely autistic. They may never speak. They're never going to go to regular education. You're going to have to separate them. Sean is pervasive. He's going to have to go to this program. Dan's going to go to that one. So it continued like that all the way through high school. In fact, and I'll end my story here, if you take a picture, if you look at the picture on graduation day from my boys, Kevin is in a black gown with an orange tassel from Libertyville High School. Dan is in a red gown with a white tassel from Mundelein Special Education. And Sean is in a blue gown or silver gown with a special education tassel from Vernon Hills High School. That's where they ended up going into those special needs programs, which ended up then after that was transition. So, I'm not telling all the dark sides of things and the moments that, were super challenging, but there was a lot of laughs too. And we took our vacations. And real quick one more. Sean, we're going to drive to Colorado. We got as a reward, we're bringing my in-laws. They thought it was a reward. So we get in a big van and we live in Libertyville. So on the way out of town, we're only about 10 miles. We're a little town in Marengo. Boom. What is that? I pull over and literally a hole about that big came out of the tire, but the tube was still good. So the tire so I pull into the service station, take the family to the McDonald's. They say, oh yeah, we can repair your tire. It's going to be about an hour. I said, okay, well, we've been on the road for an hour. Let's all eat. So we're walking up the aisle. And at that time, Sean was just into ice. He was going to get ice no matter what. So we're walking up the aisle. Woman's drinking a large Coke with the top off. And as Sean walks up, he just reaches in, grabs her ice. So I calmly go to the counter. I said, I'll have 2 Happy Meals, a large Diet Coke for that lady, 2 shakes, that's what you got to do. You got to go, So anyway, I'll stop there, but it's been a journey. It's been a journey, and it continues to today.
Paul, thanks for sharing. It's a reminder that each of you probably have dozens and dozens and dozens of stories that you can share. And I'll just remind you, what we're looking for is a time or two where you felt like you were on the dark side, maybe in your relationship or your marriage, just to be authentic, like you each have been so far. So Rick, back to you.
Yeah. So my darkest times, my most humbling times were with my first autistic kid. and he's the lowest functioning besides my son with Down syndrome. But so it's really neat listening to you guys, because I kind of have PTSD a little bit. And things went from worse and they just kept going. We just kept digging ourselves in a hole. I felt like when I tried to fix something, I just couldn't fix it. My wife, like a lot of women, just got really emotional about everything. So when he got the diagnosis and we put him in an autism class, and he had really bad behaviors, and we put this BIP, this behavioral intervention plan in there, and that didn't work. And the teachers calling us every day, come get your child. He, just bit me, come get your child. He's being destructive in our class. And she would call me, my wife would call me in tears. You need to come home. You need to come home. And I'd come home, and, and we'd try to fix things, and we just couldn't find any answers. And we became like a lot of families with special needs kids, and just became recluse, and just brought it inside and just shut the doors and shut the windows. And we're just going to keep our problems in our house. And holy cow, I did not want to come home. I did not want to face my wife. She was in complete mama bear mode. We were fighting the district. We couldn't find place for him. And it was just, it was difficult. And the only time I could get any kind of reprieve was when I slept. That was the only time that I had some kind of break from the monotony and the grind every single day. And what's he done now? And come get him. And how am I going to afford attorneys to go after our school district? And we moved into this school district because they were the best for special needs. And it just went from bad to worse. And, the district finally came out and said, we're going to offer you NPS. And I said, what's that? And they said, non-public school. We're going to pay for you to take that kid anywhere you want because we cannot handle him. And most parents really fight for that. And then a psychologist grabbed us in a parking lot, and she said, this conversation did not happen, but I'm telling you, we have places in the district. And if you take that kid somewhere else to one of these private places, he'll never come back. And she basically convinced us to fight. And we fought. And I went out and stalked a teacher that we had a good recommendation for. And I stopped her on a street one day. And of course, she thought I was going to mug her. And I said, I'm Rick Daynes. And she knew exactly who I was, because every special education teacher in the district knew our story and knew the fight we were going through. And she said, I know who you are, and I know who your kid is, and I want that kid. And I was just bawling. I was a complete mess. And the next day, the district put that kid in, and that one teacher turned him around. But there was a journey of teachers and resource specialists. And when you're brand new in the special needs community, it's a totally different language. It's like, I couldn't cope with any of it. I did my best to fix things, but my wife, when she's in complete mama bear mode, I tell people, like, you cannot imagine the emotions of a parent whose child is being attacked. And we felt like our child was being attacked, and the gloves were off. And frankly, my wife, we were angry at the district, the teachers, the schools. We were angry at each other. We were angry at God. We were angry at anybody and anything. Like, you didn't want to be around us. And so that's my story about dark places. Once we learned to cope with that, and once we learned about, how to handle ourselves and handle each other when our back's up against the wall, then when our second one came along, when we got this kid with Down syndrome, we're like, of course, bring it on, because we know what we're doing. Like, we're not going to be perfect. We're gonna stumble, we're gonna fall, but we we know what to, we know ourselves better, we know our marriage better, and we know how to make it happen, how to make it work.
Rick, thanks for sharing. Rich, back to you.
Talking about the school system, didn't you gentlemen all get to hate the term IEP, that acronym IEP? The Individualized Education Plan. I still remember those meetings. Those could be dark meetings because they always would say, well, we can't afford this accommodation, so forth, great challenge. There's a lot of dark moments, but there are also bright moments that somehow bring respite, like that teacher brought to you, Rick. But the first dark moment is when your child receives the diagnosis. I still vividly remember being in that neurologist's office and with tears in my eyes saying, "You mean I won't get to see my son play Little League?" And, I always wanted a son, and we live vicariously through our children in so many ways. I did get to see him play Little League because I helped found the Challenger division of our Little League in our county, and ended up being a coach, which scared me half to death, but ended up being such an incredible blessing. Would love to tell you stories if we had time. The physical and emotional challenge that you face as a couple. There's our son had terrible asthma for the first 2 years, and Kathy and I took turns being up all night, holding him and rocking him. He couldn't breathe laying down. And you get so exhausted, you lose patience with each other. That they called me the raccoon at the office because it has dark circles under my eyes. One of the interesting dark ones is, comparison is the thief of joy. Comparison is the thief of joy. Before we had children, we started we were young. We started a young couples group of young marrieds. There were 5 or 6 couples, and then we had children. And watching their children, the other couple's children, thrive, where we'd be sitting around and one of the couples would say, "Our 5-year-old can now recite 105 flags of the world." And I'm sitting there thinking, my 5-year-old finally is able to sit up. The comparison is the thief of joy. And then another dark spot is when our children enter adolescence, become teenagers and so forth, the loneliness they experience. I can remember my son crying himself to sleep out of loneliness. Fortunately, we found this camp run by an organization called Young Life, which dramatically changed his life because they work with special needs kids. But the stress on you as a couple, you can get so discouraged. My wife was the mama bear too, and I heard Rick when he said how he come home and she'd be waiting for me because she's had a hard day. I mean, and this is where I want to recommend to young couples. There's this thing called counseling, and it's not something that should be embarrassed about. I finally got to one point where I said to Kathy, I've found an older woman who's raised children, who's a counselor, so you can't claim it's some white male giving us all the answers. I want to go to this counselor, and she can make us hear each other. And that's just what the counselor did. And she didn't solve any of our issues per se, but she enabled us to hear each other and bring about some real reconciliation, because the messages we were sending weren't the ones we were receiving. So we should never be embarrassed to go to counseling. And the final comment I have is, I'd like to say, life is 99% about relationships. Everything else is details. And the bright light along the way has often been other people who have walked with us. We have one couple that's walked with us from the beginning, and they raised 3 very successful sons. But because of the way they treated my son and taught their sons to engage and embrace my son, I never felt the comparison with that couple. And we're still friends to this day. We've been friends for well over 40 years. Companions are so important, my friends. Companions are so important. And God can raise up companions like that couple, friends. He really can.
Rich, thanks for sharing. That comment you made about comparison is the thief of joy applies to all families, all people for that matter.
Yeah.
Right? You could be perfectly content, and then you realize that somebody else's situation is different, and all of a sudden, what you were happy and satisfied with one moment, you become unhappy with, or dissatisfied with, or start to think otherwise of. And I think that that's a pearl of wisdom to be shared for everyone, not just a family with special needs. So thanks again for sharing. Al Feria has joined us. Al, if you're able to share your video and join us, make a brief self-introduction, and then the topic or the question is, if you can reflect on a point in time that you felt like you were in a dark place. So I'm thinking about advice, and a couple of you have already jumped ahead and offered some advice. So reflecting on the idea that there's maybe 1 or 2 things that you can reflect back on and say, this was most instrumental in our relationship. Was most instrumental in our circumstance to get back on track, and just share an idea or 2 that comes to mind. So Scott.
Kind of, I guess. I mean, I've gotten all kinds of advice over the years from teachers, which Gloria had some wonderful special ed teachers that were just really, really good. Some were not so good, but the ones that were good, I'm still friends with, and they get along great. I think it's not so much, the best advice I got was from a DO who told me, he said, just don't, you're not going to fix her. She's going to be what she's going to be. Okay. And when the doctor tells you that, it's kind of like, what does that mean? And trust me, over the years, I've seen what that means. I always equate it to the big switchboard, the milestones that we all hit, the eating, the crawling, the walking, talking, you hit all these milestones. And I was told be patient because she's mentally delayed, physically. Gloria's 33. She's got hands like a 10-year-old. I mean, it's really interesting. But like every 5 years, is she going to talk? I don't think she's going to. 5 years, click. She starts talking. Now she won't stop talking. So, the advice that I was given was wait it out. Don't be impatient. Help. Don't try to push and force things on her. Just let things take their natural course, but always be there to, don't hold her back. So those are the kind of things the advice that I liked. The best advice I get constantly is from Sharon. Sharon is just, I don't know. It's a mother thing, I guess. Mother-daughter thing. She's always right. She has the greatest advice. She was also a Montessori teacher for 20 years for primary age kids, which she did that in order to be at home with Gloria. So she had an in-home Montessori school for 2.5 to 5-year-olds and did that for 20 years. And of course, Maria Montessori was started with Down syndrome kids. Her whole thing was teaching the kids with special needs and Down syndrome and teaching them how to learn using these tools and things. But Sharon is she always gives me good advice. And I'm the one that comes home and I'm getting upset or something's wrong, or I get annoyed or I get impatient. And she just looks at me and says, really? Just chill out. It's all good. And then, but yeah, the support, have a support group was good. Spend time alone. I guarantee you, all of us, none of you guys have just gone off, no cell phone, nothing, and laid on a blanket in a park for an hour or 2 hours. You can just, it's important to have that time alone. And that's what people tell me. You got to re-energize yourself. But yeah, and the respite, just it's okay. It's okay to get away and take some time. Trust me, for not just for you, but for your children as well. I'm sure they could use some time away. But anyway, I think the greatest advice I ever had was to just wait things out and be patient. Don't let it overwhelm you all the time. And I think that might be what you're looking for. I don't know.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate it. Paul, back to you with one or two pieces of advice that you might be able to offer a young dad as it relates to the importance of respite.
Yeah, I think what happened to us, it was so overwhelming to have triplets, to have two disabled, to have a younger son. And as my older son, we found out that he had a reading disability. So we were dealing with his educational challenges. We held him back in first grade and all of that. So, there was so much coming at us. The biggest thing that happened to us with Dan and Sean, there was a neurologist. They gave him an EEG, I think it was an EEG, just to check the brain waves. And we got to talking. I'm a sales guy. So every time I met any doctor, any counselor, any teacher, I wanted to build a relationship and I wanted to get the most from them that I could understand what knowledge can they impart. And this particular doctor shared with us, we were at Children's to do this EEG, that a new psychiatrist, Dr. Catherine McKenna, was coming from NIH. She had done a lot of work with autistics and she might see our guys. And this was at age 3. We proceeded to meet with Dr. McKenna. We found her to be just really warming, and she looked at our family as a whole, not just Dan's autism or Sean's autism or Kevin, or as a whole, and said, I'd really like to see these guys once a month. I want you to bring your whole family. We're like, okay. So she was at Children's in Chicago. So once a month on a Saturday morning, because that was the best time for everybody, we would go down to Chicago, go to Children's. We would meet at this weird little building off the Children's campus. And she would just kind of walk through progress. Where are the guys? What are the challenges? What are your teachers saying? Bring notes. We were with her until the boys were 19 years old and she moved back to California. It was the most amazing thing in our lives because she gave us guidance, and it was all, kind of part of the normal insurance thing. We weren't totally out of whack. Sometimes we had to pay out of pocket for a few things, but having that person that we could kind of talk with, we were kind of talking on behalf of Dan and Sean many times, but she also would look at them, talk to them, talk to Kevin, talk to Brian, not in depth, but making sure that they were part of the unit. How were they feeling with guys running around? And so that part of it, I think, if I look back, we had incredible teachers through CEDAL, in the special needs all the way through. And each of those people, some of those people became respite workers. I didn't even know what the word respite meant. Someone said, are you going to get respite? I said, I don't know. What is it? And then you find out that these people will give you time to break away. And I know we're going to have that question probably coming up because that's so critical. Not only are you focused on your kids, but you need to be focused on your spouse, and you need to have a sense of normalcy and to provide, what Rich said about comparison couples doing other things with their kids. Well, You just need to have that moment. But Dr. McKenna, David, was by far and away just the rock that kind of guided us all the way through. And we built a relationship with her, so she continued to want to see us until finally the system said, these boys are almost 20 years old. They're not pediatric anymore. You got to go. So when she moved away, that was the end of that. But we had built such a foundation. It was tremendous.
Paul, thanks for sharing. Rick, back to you for advice.
Well, I'd like to kind of piggyback off of what Scott said a little bit. The first thing I tell a young dad is you got to take care of number one. And number one is not your wife, it's you. You got to take care of you. Well, then they say, well, Rick, it's just like, it's exhausting. I don't have time. Like I go to work, I come home, and I'm dealing with this all night. And there's no reprieve. There's nothing. And I said, look, you got to do something. You got to, even if it's 10 minutes a day, you got to be consistent. You got to give yourself, like, what's your hobby? Do you like to play basketball? Go shoot hoops for 10, 15 minutes. Go take a walk. Go do whatever you like to do. Lose yourself in a book, a magazine, but you got to find something to take care of number one. And the other thing that I tell young dads, when they get started, is you have to date your wife. And this is where Respite comes into play. The first time, so my wife and I, we did not date for probably 4 years, I think. We would not trust anybody to come in and take care of this kid. We knew that if we had a babysitter come in, we knew the house was going to burn down. There was no doubt about it. There was going to be problems, right? We were going to go to the hospital, you name it. And we finally were like, okay, we're going to do this Respite thing, right? But before we did another, we just were like, we got a family member to come in. We're like, we got to start. And seriously, my wife and I, we went from the front door to the carport, and we sat in our car for 20 minutes. And that was our first date. We just knew, we knew the house was going to burn down. We knew we were going to go to the hospital. Our next date, we got in the car and we drove down the street, and we sat there for 40 minutes, 45 minutes. We took baby steps, really, right? So we took baby steps, and then we got Respite. And then we got people that we could trust a little more. And man, I'm telling you, when we left the house, that babysitter had a list of everything, just call 911, just call 911. Like we had all of these steps in place. But those are the two bits of advice that I would give, is you got to take care of number one. So find something that you do that you enjoy, that'll give you something, anything, to even if you just go meditate or yoga or work out or whatever, you got to find something for you. And then you got to date your wife. You got to date your wife. If you got to do baby steps, then you do baby steps. You work up to it. I got a good friend who every Thursday night at 6 o'clock, the babysitter's there, and he tells the babysitter, look, you be here every week, 6 o'clock. I'm never going to call you. I don't care if there is a big ball game going on. I don't care if there's a death in my family. I don't care about nothing. You be here 6 o'clock every week. And they do it religiously every single week. And then they've been doing it for years. He said that there's only been one time, and that's when he had a sick kid, and he felt like, I can't do this to the babysitter, where the babysitter, they called the babysitter off. But those two things, if you can do those two things, then you got a fighter's chance. If you got those two things, then you got better than a fighter's chance. You'll do all right.
Rick, thanks for sharing. I'd like to go into the final round, if I can, and ask for a resource or a couple of resources, if you can each share. Scott, I'm wondering if you can reflect on a resource or some resources that have been helpful for you in sharing.
Well, the resources I have are talk to other parents of special needs kids, because most of us are friends with parents of special needs kids, or our groups, and everybody has something to say about everything. Also, check with your church ministries. Like our ministry at St. John Newman has, we offer a lot of information. And again, David, I don't really look for resources because I got you, man. I mean, the Special Fathers Network. I mean, look at the people we had at the conference, for crying out loud. If I could tell young guys, get on board with us, guys, come on, join up. If for nothing else, just for the fellowship and the resources that we have. There's tons of them. So yeah, I don't really go out looking for resources anymore, but I love this. You guys, it's all here.
Thanks, Scott. Paul, back to you.
It's kind of interesting. I mentioned this, Dr. McKenna was, Bridge for 18 years, but we've kind of, at every stage, we've had a resource. So early childhood, we kind of developed a relationship with their teacher. And I think if you show, no matter, my Dan was a challenge, and my Sean was a challenge, but if you show that you love them, you're interested, you're going to be there for them, they'll help you. I mean, so we had really great stuff at CEDAW. We had great stuff when they were in grade school. We joined the Special Olympics, and that was fantastic. And so each of those things was really important. And then when they got to be 18, we signed up with an ISC in Illinois. It's an agency that, plans the funding. And my wife built an incredible relationship with Community Alternatives, and that's helped us guide us on the financial side for their long-term stuff. So each time we've kind of trusted, I mean, there's been some bad ones, but we've trusted the educator, we've trusted the guidance, and we've kind of built a relationship all along the way as they've gotten older and older. Now we're with, they go to day programs at the Center for Enriched Living. I was just talking to Harriet Levy today. She says to say hello to you, David. This is where they go 3 days a week, and then they go to special rec of Central Lake County 2 days a week. And we have built relationships with these people, and it's so critical. It's just like anything else in life, and they feel that they'll take care of the guys. They know we're committed to them, we're committed to the boys. So I just think it's like anything in life. If you can build a community with your kids, with the people that work with them, stay part of it. And I totally agree with what Scott said, David. Now I've got 2 guys that I worked with. They were all retired we were with Amgen, and they've become grandfathers of 2 autistic grandsons, and they're lost. And I've talked to them about the resources of the Special Fathers Network for their son and son-in-law. It's something that no one has. And to be able to listen to these stories and to listen to how people have overcome their challenges and the resources they have are so important. So that's what I got.
Paul, thanks for sharing. Rick, back to you.
Yeah, I'll go again with what the gentlemen have said before me. Parents are a phenomenal resource. So before we had any ABA workers come in our house or therapy or anything, before we had anybody in here, my wife was looking at Craigslist and found a mom who had raised her kids and just wanted to give back, right? She had a special needs kid who was doing okay, high functioning and out, and she just wanted to give back. And so my wife invited her over. She was the very first person. And really, that's kind of like, that's more advice I'd give. You got to take chances, and you got to have take a leap of faith on a lot of this stuff, because so many of our club, I know one of you talked about a village, I call it the club, same thing, right? So many people in our club, they just don't want to do that. Like that, maybe there's a pride issue. I don't want the government paying for this or that. I mean, I was there, like, I don't want, all that, but you just got to bring it in, right? You got to accept it, and you got to get all the help you can. So I definitely like this David, this resource I think is phenomenal. I don't take advantage of it as much as I can because I got 5 kids and a wife, and I'm grinding out. In fact, I got a kid in the other room right now who's got a babysitter going on. So I'll send you the bill on that one. But anyway, I just think that parents are such a phenomenal resource, and you got to go to the resource center. And there's all kinds of stuff, but if Respite, I think, is the most underutilized program in special needs. I'm telling you, there are 5 families that I can just walk to their house in a matter of minutes, and none of them take advantage of it. They're scared. It's just not their style. They don't want to do it. And when my wife, Robin, and we come in and we say, hey, look, we know your kids, like, we'll hang out for an hour and you could just take a walk for 20 minutes with your husband. Like, people just won't accept help. And it bothers me because I know that their marriages are struggling. I know that they need help. I know they need to take their wives on a walk. You know, the divorce rate in the special needs community, there's been a couple studies, you know, they're probably a little bit flawed, but there's some big numbers. And the divorce rate in the special needs community is way higher than the norm. It's because when you add those stressors into your marriage, if you don't learn how to deal with it and cope with it and take advantage of these resources that everybody's talking about, then you're just going to be another statistic. That's what I got, David.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Rick. Really appreciate it. Rich, I want to publicly apologize. I skipped you last round, so I'm going to give you an extra minute or two if it's okay with you. Thanks.
Well, the point of being about asking for help is so important. When you have friends want to be available. And one resource for us is taking advantage of friends that really know our kids, can really handle them, and to take that break. One thing Kathy and I committed ourselves to over 35 years ago was an annual marriage retreat where we'd go someplace fun and bright and beautiful. We would go on Saturday morning and come home Sunday night. So the people covering the kid or kids only had to deal with one night, which is often a challenge. And what we do on that retreat is, number one, we do some play where we laugh and just play. We get some sleep because we live so many of our years sleep deprived. Getting some sleep was important. But we also do something that I developed called the vision statement. And basically, it is a statement of our own sense of mission. And Kathy and I are always editing this, our own sense of mission in life. And it's broken down into 3 categories. This has already come up. First category is self-care. How do we take care of ourselves? Second category is relationship care with not only our own children, but our family, our long-term friends, our new friends. How do we want to cultivate relationships? And the third category is our assignments as we seek to love our neighbor. And what are the measurable things we want to do ahead? Like Paul starting the group home is a measurable project. What are the projects ahead of us that we want to accomplish? Well, Kathy and I review that and rewrite it on our marriage retreat. And we also do other things like, okay, what have I been doing wrong? Where have I fallen short? Have some pretty frank talks, but play, review of the past year and its objectives, some real candor of what we've done wrong, getting some rest, Saturday morning to Sunday night. It's made a big difference to have that annual retreat. We found a wonderful retreat center here in Florida that we go to where we can get out on the water in a canoe, where they have a swimming pool. We can sit by the water and wrestle with these things. Another simple resource that I came up with, a self-resource, and this wasn't long ago, I decided that I wanted to give Kathy what I call an exquisite moment every day, where she knows that I'm fully concentrating on her. It can be very simple, like getting someone to cover things and go for a walk. But the other day, I took her to a French cafe for coffee and a croissant. Just a lovely French cafe, as only the French can do it. And it was an exquisite moment. And then the other day, one of the other families in our village picked Will up for his therapy and said, well, we'll take Will home and come and get him when you want. Well, then I took Kathy to the top of a hotel overlooking the ocean, where we sat and had an extended, exquisite moment. I call the ocean God's Prozac. There's something about looking out over that, and you know, we sat there and had hors d'oeuvres and drinks, and it was a beautiful day, and it was respite, because frankly, our son otherwise captures every moment of the day, and you can get to feeling a little smothered. But to take that retreat and these exquisite moments, and I decided to take the exquisite moments on myself. I get up in the morning, okay, where can I put one of those together? It can be just sitting out back behind the house. Well, Will's involved in some project or whatever, but she needs to know every day that she is an incredibly important person.
Rich, pearls of wisdom. Thank you for sharing. Al, I'm so glad that you could join us. I'm wondering if you might be able to share a resource or a few resources that come to mind as well.
Sure. My name is Al. I live in New Jersey, northern New Jersey. We have a son who's 9.5 with autism, so I'm on the younger end of kids. I was doing bath time with him before, which is why I didn't have the camera on. We 7 years ago, he was diagnosed. We knew nothing about special needs. We had no family in the area as well. But really, some faith-based organizations have helped us provide respite, especially pre-COVID. There's a group called Joni and Friends, which does some really good family retreats for the whole family. I have 3 typical kids older than my son, John. And the first time we went, they were amazed. They had activities for the whole family, for the typical kids too. And so with our family, it's been important to try to not neglect our typical kids because of John's needs. And so these retreats have been really good. We've gone to 4 of them, I think, over the years. There's another group called Buddy Break by Nathaniel's Hope in Florida, and they help churches develop respite programs about once a month on a Saturday, normally 3-hour block of time. Pre-COVID, we were going to 2 different ones in New Jersey. It was great. And our church also had their own that wasn't Buddy Break. So we were getting 3 a month, basically, of respite. COVID hit, and it was very hard for doing virtual school and pretty much losing all the one-to-one aids as well as a lot of respite. So it's been a rough 18 months, things like that. Recently I've run into, actually there was a guy, David, I was at the retreat we had recently. There's a guy named Drew from New Jersey, and we actually live in the next town over from him. I ran into him at the pool on Saturday, our town pool. We're both members of that. They have really young kids, and their son was, within the last year, he was diagnosed. So I'm sure we'll be having further talks about, they have a lot of questions about what to do, which you do when you initially get diagnoses and things like that. So with him, and there's another guy, I was at a park with my son, and another guy recognized signs of autism. So he asked me right away about my son. He has a son with autism as well. So just kind of in living life here, I'm running into other dads with autism, kids with autism, and trying to help pass on resources and just our experience. as well. It's kind of fresh. It's only 7 years, so it's not that far back in time. But yeah, initially it's that first year is really hard, couple of years when you don't know what you're doing, and there's really not a clear path what you do with education and in respite and all sorts of stuff. So I think that's especially when, and I know at the men's retreat as well, you're trying to get that some young dads as well, you know, younger with autism, things like that, and special needs. But yeah, respite, we're getting more of it now as COVID is kind of slowing down some. So we're thankful for that, but it's still, whether it's as a couple or as a family, we would often do our birthday parties for our older kids when there's a respite night. So John would be away for 3 hours at a church, and then we do a birthday party for our other kids. So that gave us an opportunity to celebrate our other kids as well with formal respite programs for our son with autism.
Al, I'm so glad that you can join us. Thank you for that practical advice and the organizations that you made reference to. And Lyle, I noticed that you were able to join us. And if you want to have a last thought or two about some resources, we'd love to have you share a thought.
There's not enough respite. Lying like crazy to find people, but they can't even hire them in Indianapolis anymore because they're not paying them enough money. They don't want to do it unless grad school and she's for $15 an hour or more. They're not getting paid because the state doesn't reimburse that stuff. So they're trying to get that changed, but we just don't have enough help because we need somebody young and healthy or to be active. And the late that helps us is in her 70s. And then her best buddy in college is really busy. She's a senior, you know, we don't have enough. So we don't really get to do anything. Saturday, we had 2.5 hours to ourselves. So we went to Zionsville to have a margarita, and then we went to a new restaurant, but it's just not, we got to find, we're hunting like crazy. I'm just going to try to start something here in Indianapolis or North Side to try to get people to realize that need, and then people that care would be willing to do it. It's just really hard. Like I paid the neighbor girl $10 an hour just to tonight for 2.5 hours, just to give me some time to get some errands around, but I couldn't even finish that because she was used to her, so she didn't misbehave, but she was kind of challenging her, and she's 26, she knows better. So you know, the neighbor girl's going to college in a few weeks to study special ed, so this is a good fit. But yeah, everybody, communities are all different, but right now we're in Carmel, Indianapolis, we don't have enough. We don't have family here because, yeah, so I just keep asking people every so many months, but nothing really comes to fruition. But with Claire at home, she's in grad school, so she's at home for another year, maybe. She helps a lot, but it's still.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, I just want to say thank you for sharing again. I just want to say thank you to everybody for being so open and authentic, reflecting on some of the challenges that you've each experienced, sharing some pearls of wisdom or advice. And we'll be sure to include as many of the resources that were mentioned in tonight's conversation in the message below the YouTube video. So it'll make it as easy as possible for those that are watching this going forward to tap into some of those resources. I'll remind you that the 21st Century Dads Foundation is a 501c3 not-for-profit organization, which means we need your help to keep our programs free to all concerned. The Special Fathers Network is a dad-to-dad mentoring program for fathers raising children with special needs. We have a podcast. Each of the gentlemen that were with us tonight has done a podcast interview. So to get a little bit more background on their stories and the other dads in the network, by all means, please go to the Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast, which you can find on any of the popular podcast platforms. And be on the lookout for other topics that might be of interest to you. in addition to the topic that we covered here today, which is marriage and respite. So that's all for this call. Thank you again for all those that have participated.